Is anyone using a phone and a computer?
No, I'm not.
Okay, because it's
My phone's
feedback.
next to me, but let me just go ahead and
Mute,
shut it off to make
or
sure.
just mute one of them, so that would help. Douglas is here.
Hi,
I
Douglas.
see.
Uh-oh,
I
we
read.
just went down.
We did?
Mine, my control, my computer just went down.
Can you
Oh,
still
we
hear
can
us?
hear you.
Oh,
I can
no.
still hear you.
Okay. And we can't hear you, Douglas. I can read you in the chat box, but can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Chat box. Cool.
But you can hear you can. All right. I'm gonna just give a rundown real quick while Douglas is sorting it out. Glad everybody made it.
Perfect.
We had some really good discussions. You got some seasoned people here, Stacy, with as far as
Absolutely.
having been in the field for a while, but also having had experiences coaching in one way or the other that would lead them into areas that um, really enhance the discussions about ethics. The level of depth I think that we went into with some of them, and I'm just going to use the same experience or example that I've used on a couple of times. We were talking about how, for instance, to say no to something that you just didn't feel that was right. Oh, it was Paula Anderson. Was She was in the class, and she's a very very assertive, um, middle-aged woman who doesn't mind telling somebody no. She's had that in her life.
Right.
You don't mess with Paula. And it dawned on me that just like in the recovery coach classes, we see people like that all the time during the sexual harassment module and during other ones where they say, I just tell that, no way, that's not going to happen. And then you've got the majority of people are unable to be so, clearly black and white, no, absolutely not. And so what we realized was not only is it good to understand so much about the ethics process, um, but that there's really got to be some emotional and mature, professional maturity that goes along with it. So that has to be focused on too. So that's just one example of how we realized, wow, this is a lot deeper than just learning what's ethical and what's not.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that when we went into developing the ethics curriculum, at least the second edition of the ethics curriculum, we really wanted to focus on having all of those conversations and having the people who were participating kind of share both their perspectives, like the people who are clearly black and white, and then the people who are kind of like, well, sometimes I do this, sometimes I do that, just so that people could kind of see like how one simple thing could really kind of spiral into several other situations that could happen. And, I was just having a discussion with one of our directors that, as recovery coaching is starting to kind of become this position that people are starting to rely on, and even though it's a very new position, we have to be very steadfast in how we are and how we handle ourselves, because one wrong move could be detrimental to the whole position across the board.
Right.
You know what I mean? If we start taking advantage of those friendships, it could be very, have a negative effect on how people view recovery coaches. And we don't want that. We can't have that. We know how much the position is needed and how much how beneficial it can be if it's utilized in the appropriate way. And so, ethics is really one of those things where it wasn't like, okay, here's ethics and here's 12 hours of drilling into this is what ethics should be. It's really more of, let's talk about it, because you're going to be in those situations more often than not that you have to kind of deal with a gut reaction to something, and how are you going to react, and what are you going to think about when you do react, and what's going to go into, what factors are going to go into making those decisions.
Yeah. Well,
Excellent points. That was very eye-opening with this presentation that you provided for us.
Yeah, I love that, seeing the picture, seeing the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. So I think,
Yep.
you know,
So
for me, yeah, go ahead, Kevin, because I would love to hear, like, what other additional feedback you all had.
yeah, let's go around the room and give a couple more minutes. Alicia, you want to start?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I was just thinking while you were talking that about instances where I've sat in on trainings, assisted with trainings in the past, and situations were posed, particularly in regard to pathways, and the room could get heated, to say the least, and so bringing everybody back to, the fact that the focus is on the client or on the recovery and their particular, and how are you going to handle that, and so my thought was really knowing how you, in particular, what your personal viewpoints are, how you feel about ethics in general, but particular, you know, instances where ethics will come into play, and how are you going to handle that? Stacey, you were mentioning, the dialogue that we're not necessarily dictate and delivering, but we're opening up a dialogue, and just the huge value in that, of opening that dialogue and really bringing people to the place where they understand that, we all understand that, it really is so important and so integral to the process of how we're, using these tools,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes any sense at all. I'm
Yes.
on my first
No,
cup of coffee.
absolutely. No, that's okay.
Good job.
Randy.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're elaborating on we thought that what we got out of the training. Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Okay. I thought it was very well set up and thought out. One of the things that surprised me, I guess, that I had to look at my own ethics, is the part where we don't really take people continually to 12-step meetings. I don't push 12 steps, of course. I let that be their decision. And it makes sense when I think about it. It was just something that I had to think about when you asked the question, do we take people to 12-step meetings? And everybody in the room said no, or we take them there, but we don't go in with them. And I think you did acknowledge that I work with a little different population of people with having the extreme mental illness. A lot of them have social anxiety and stuff like that, where they do kind of see me as a friend or a buddy to go in with them. But I have been working recently, since the training, I've been working a little bit more at encouraging them to get a sponsor and attend meetings on their own. And so that was a learning piece for me, and I really like that. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Carol or Kelly? Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Well,
Kevin,
Douglas,
can you hear me?
hey, look, there he is.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. I wrote that thing on the bottom because I love to chat, but maybe in case you guys couldn't, if my mic wasn't working. But for me, the overriding thought to express here is I go back to the CCAR training in February where I really didn't know what the crap I was getting myself into. And I was floored by the content. And, for someone who for many years wrestled with, oh, I want an advanced degree, I want to become a social worker, oh, I can't, and blah, 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 blah. And to take this training, I was just floored by the quality of the content. And to me, the ethics portion, building on the time we talked about it in the training, it was just the next step. And again, it was just it's incredibly well written material. It's incredibly well articulated material. The way the binders are constructed, the format, and I'm just impressed. I continue to want to sponge up more from CCAR, and I'm grateful for Kevin's support of that and for his abilities as a trainer. I mean, that's a gifted trainer right there. But the content is just, it's right on. I'm truly, I have not reviewed my manual much since February because I'm kind of holding off on that, and I'm looking forward to. That's my deal. That's my Bible, and I wasn't expecting that when I walked into that training back in February.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I appreciate you saying that. With the ethics training, and even going back to the RCA training, when everything was first started, I don't think anybody realized that it would be what it's become, and when we were trying to figure out how to write supplemental trainings, it was really trying to figure out how to kind of capture that same magic again,
Sure.
because there's just so much in the RCA. It's so rich, and it's all about the participants, and
Yeah.
the first version of our ethics curriculum was very much sit and get, and it was a lot of repetitive from the RCA, and it just didn't feel the same, and Kevin was in that room when we first rolled it out. It was just different, and I
Yeah.
didn't have the same wow, this was the best training I've ever been in. And I've come from working at an educational agency where all we did was professional development.
Yeah.
That's all we did. So I had 16 years of sitting in all these professional development lectures and things. And when I took the RCI, I was like, wow, that's so well done. And I really want all of the rest of our curriculums to kind of follow that same model. And I think even our spirituality curriculum does the same. But with ethics, like I said before, I think it's not so much presenting the information so people know what ethics are. I think you want people to be able to just make really good decisions. You know what I mean? And for the benefit of the people that they serve, not for themselves, not for their agency, but for the people that they serve. And so I think that, in going through and writing these curriculums that we're kind of adding into, it takes us a really long time because we're really trying to make sure that we're not just lecturing people. That's not what we do. We want people to think, we want people to give them themselves, because we know that that's why they're in this position in the first place.
And what's interesting to me, if I may add, Stacy, is I very purposely put "stay in our lanes" in all caps there because, as we all know, there are those in the world of treatment, physicians, clinicians, counselors, that are both not very receptive to coaching and those that are.
Mm-hmm.
And it is important, extremely important, to say, you know what? No, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist, but I'm a peer with lived experience, and to convey the relevance of that. And how do you do that? Well, you look at the CCAR training, and it's not a joke. Like it's all there. It's right there. And I'm just
Mhm.
that's awesome. It's fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Really, I do.
This the one thing to kind of expound on what something that Doug said is that we are peers. Uh, this training made me review my role as a peer. It helped me kind of really define that while we are equal, the vulnerability aspect of this was, it really better defined my role as a peer recovery coach. I thought that was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Does anyone have any other comments? Kevin, I don't know if you
yes,
have anything to wrap up.
Kelly has something to say. Click on this, Kelly.
Oh, perfect.
She's getting her microphone on. Okay,
Okay.
Oh, yay.
Hello. Great. I was trying to understand why I was talking, and I wasn't
And no one
getting
could
in there.
hear you.
A couple of things that really struck me. I had not really thought a whole lot about and paid attention to the how important these relationships are, that we connect with each other, that we support one another. Carol and I, obviously, we're from a very rural area, and it's easy for us to not be connected. And of course, understanding how important, making all our forums and all that kind of things are. But we kind of have to look at this whole process and what we learned in ethics, and we can see that we're going to have some adjusting that we may need to do, because both of us right away realized we were in a room full of what we would call professionals, people who are living, eating, breathing, doing this every day. Whereas we are volunteers, and we are in our own worlds, doing our own things, and then we had to start asking for examples, so that we could kind of get on the same page as everybody. And thank you, Carol, for doing that, as a matter of fact. And so, we can see that there's going to be some things that we'll probably are going to need to tweak and look at, as far as, because our geographic area is so large, and we're in a rural setting. I also really love the idea of recovery coaches having recovery coaches, so that we made sure that we were staying connected, and that really showed itself in the ethics department, because these decisions are so important, and they can affect long-term the success or not of the recovery coach movement. We really need one another for accountability, somebody to bounce things off from, challenge us, offer suggestions, because when we're caught up in our own heads, our own ways of doing things, a lot of times we don't even see it. We don't even realize what's happening. So we need each other to help us with that, and so that became really relevant in what I could see. And also the connection between ethics and all of our policies and procedures. Many of course, all of us organizations have our policies and procedures, or we're developing them. And, what does that have to do with ethics? How does that tie in? How do we make peace with maybe policies and procedures that are there, but, we're not too sure?
I just stopped hearing everything.
I did too. Okay. But now I hear everything is back again. So I'm not
Okay.
sure why.
Okay.
Actually, we just lost both of them off the grid. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. That was me, Doug Stacy.
Great. Oh, my mic was off. Can you hear me now?
All right. Yep, sure can.
Okay.
All right, so I know they just fell off even the participant list, so I don't know if maybe they had a computer issue.
Yeah.
Stacey, I'm getting a ton of feedback with you.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Let me see if I can.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Maybe what I will do is.
All right, I can't hear anybody right now. Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you. This is Randy.
Okay, hi Randy. I just heard you.
Okay, hi Randy.
Okay.
I just heard you.
Perfect. All right, well let's.
Perfect. All right, well let's keep going, at least with the curriculum piece. And then, like I said, I'm recording this anyway, so hopefully we can send links to Carol and Kelly. I'm not sure why it dropped off like that.
They are in a very rural.
Back in.
They are in a very rural area. So, and I was up there a couple weeks ago, and it was tough getting a signal. Yeah.
Yeah, so it could just be internet connectivity.
There they are.
There
Let's
isn't a
see,
number
Carol,
to call in.
maybe?
It's just
No,
through the
maybe
web,
not.
Kevin.
See their names. See their names. Okay.
Oh, yeah, they're back. All right, hold on. Let me... Kevin, you still can't get your microphone to work?
Okay, we're back up. Sorry, we lost. It just shut us both down.
That's okay. That's fine. Huh, that's weird. I know I had to download the app to my phone for some reason my computer was messing up this morning. That's why I have two profiles, but one is muted out.
Okay.
And I'm able to use like my smartphone to have my headset and my mic in. I'm not sure, Kevin, if that would be something.
Well, we'll continue to try the
Perfect.
computer, and if we shut down again, we'll try to use a smartphone.
Yeah, and then Kevin, if you need the link, I think that's the link to get on.
When you get to the app.
When you get to
All right,
the app.
so let me go through a little bit of the actual
All right, so let me go through a little bit of the actual curriculum, and if we have to use the chat box to kind of go back and forth, here, let me make you a presenter, Kevin, so that hopefully we can hear you now. No. But let's kind of go through the curriculum and some things and see if we can at least get through some of it. You know, I know technology-wise we may have to deal with a little bit of shortcomings with volume and chatting and whatnot, but hopefully we can at least get through, and I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable presenting. Obviously, Kevin is a very seasoned trainer, so, and also knowing that he had come to take our ethical considerations way back when we had first developed it, I really wanted to try to find a way to get you guys all the training. I know Michigan is big. You guys do a lot of trainings, and so this seemed like a really next step to kind of give you guys this other supplemental curriculum, is to get a few of you out here training this. But also making sure that we met your needs is wanting to know, you know, maybe how to do certain things or having those opportunities to have those questions answered. So we'll just move through, and, you know, like I said, if there's anything, and you can chime in through your mic, chime in. If not, use the chat box. I'll try to be as responsive as I can. So today I really wanted to go through the learning objectives and the performance measures of the curriculum. When I developed this, it was really looking at what do we want to have accomplished and how would we know that people were able to accomplish it. So there's actual performance measures written into it. I definitely want you guys to be able to ask questions regarding content, delivery model, etc., and then address any challenges or, you know, to training the curriculum, and then also go through and just a reminder of the logistics. As presenters, you know, the ordering the manuals and things such as that, which hopefully were outlined in the trainer's agreement, but if anybody had any additional questions. So obviously, these are the learning objectives for the ethics course. We left them kind of broad, you know. We're not like making them, you know, you need to know what ethics are and define them in a sentence and da-da-da-da, you know. We just really wanted people to understand the importance of ethics and the role of recovery coach. So we wanted people to learn what they are, understand why they're so important, know how to stay in your lane, because that's huge, understand the decision-making process, develop our own personal guidelines for making some ethical decisions, and apply our new learning to our work as recovery coaches.
No.
Any questions about any of that?
No.
Okay, perfect. I will move on.
No?
All right.
Okay, perfect. I will move on. All right, so obviously in day one, there's the welcome and introductions, and again, the same model as we do with the RCA. We welcome everybody to the space, we introduce who we are, and we do that 2-minute autobiography, going around the room. That's something that we feel is very important, getting an idea of who's in the room and what their motivation is for being there. We do the overview of the program, giving people an opportunity to see the learning objectives, see the agenda, and then we do the working agreements, which I feel are very important in this curriculum too, because there are a lot of different perspectives that come into the room, and so we really want to make sure that people feel that having a safe space to be able to have some of these challenging conversations where people might be on two different sides of the spectrum are available for folks. We want people to feel welcome, and we want them to definitely feel safe. We talk about what are ethics. We introduce the language of ethics. And then in the afternoon, we talk about, what a recovery coach is, what it isn't. We talk about that whole staying in your lane thing. We get to some boundaries, and then we have an opportunity for questions and feedback. I mean, it doesn't seem like a very heavy day when you look at the agenda. There's not like 20 different bullet points. But then once you start going through the actual curriculum, you end up seeing how rich the content is. So obviously the working agreements are the same as they are with the RCA, and just like I said, making sure participants have what they need in order to be able to fully participate. And then we talk about what are ethics. So the purpose of that module is to define first, the term ethics, and then to really kind of come up with definitions. We really want people to focus on, like it says there, their own knowledge, and then be able to then clarify or restate them, throughout the session. The other piece, too, is to understand the language of ethics, and then just to define some of those additional terms. People use values and morals and principles throughout, everyday conversation, but really understanding what they are, or at least understanding how you define them as an individual, to me, is really important. So the next piece that we talk about is really the common definitions that come up in ethics a lot, and iatrogenic, the multi-party vulnerability, boundary management, and fiduciary. And this is one of those pieces where when we were first writing it, it was like, oh, this is going to be so heavy. And it ends up being really good conversation. And people start introducing iatrogenic into their vocabulary pretty quickly throughout the next 2 days, which is funny. But the way we like for people to do it, and obviously you can definitely stand up in the front of the room and go through the PowerPoint for those, 4 definitions. Everybody has the definitions in their booklet. But there is, some options to do it. And, an alternate way to teach this module may depend on the size of the room and timing, is to assign each group one term to learn, and then have, the group spend some time learning the term, and then having each group get up and move like to stations, except you have one person that stays that teaches everybody else what they just learned. It's kind of like jigsawing the activity. And then when everybody else comes back to their home table, they take some time to teach the person that had to stay what they learned. And so, like I said, it just provides a little bit of movement and a little bit of ownership for learning and teaching the material. The other thing is you can kind of do that again in the same way. If you have a smaller group, and assign each table 2 terms, and then, send only a couple ambassadors to each table. The way we did it is we actually, in the last class that I had, we had about 20 people, and but we only had like 3 tables because we wanted there to be, a lot of different perspectives at each table. And so we did the first term together, iatrogenic. Then I gave each of the tables their own term to learn, and then we just had them get up and give a report. So there's a couple of different ways to do it so that people aren't just sitting and listening to slides for, however long. So it's really one of those things where, again, there's a couple of different ways to deliver it, however you'd like, but just giving you a few ideas. Any questions about any of that so far?
No?
Nope, all good.
Are you able to hear me now, finally?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say,
All right.
that everybody was good.
Good.
Yes, I can hear you.
It's all good. We kind of went through, just to tell you too, Stacy, that. Just to tell you too, Stacy, that. Hold on a minute. Just to tell you too, Stacy, that. Hold on a minute. Okay, is that better?
Sounds like a rap song.
There
It's
you
amazing. My now I can't hear you. Unmute my speakers. Okay, there we go.
Yes.
He's back.
It was. I had I got a headset, a phone, a computer, and none of it's really jiving with each other.
It's a juggling act, these webinars.
Okay. Yeah. So what we did initially when we started, probably the first third, maybe the first quarter of the training, I was going through it as if they were trainees and I was the trainer, and then I shifted, and we all just thought it was really good and beneficial for me to go along and read that with them what the trainer book says and what the trainer's going to do. And in some cases, we did like, what way do we think would be best to run this little thing? Or you understand that here you have options. So as you're going along, I thought, well, it was pretty neat that we kind of made that shift, and it still added. I mean, it added that other layer of intent, your motives, instead of just soaking in the ethics, which was really the intent. They're looking at like, how best to get this information into their head. So, presenting the options like you're doing, I didn't have that. You know what I mean, as far as the different ways to break out the groups and all that stuff. So this is good. And you're right. Is it lotrogenic, whatever it was. Now I can't even remember it, and I was using it every day. So that was good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's funny because somebody
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because somebody, like, at the end of the whole thing, they're like, I would never use that word. And they're like, challenged me to use it in a sentence, and I was like, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, and I hadn't been, like, put on the spot like that. And I was like, I don't even know how I would use it in a sentence. But then, like I said, by the end of day 2, it was like everybody was talking about it, especially the next day when we were doing huddles and mingles, and you have them kind of go back and kind of remember some of the things that they learned, and it was just really funny that people were starting to kind of use it. And granted, it's one of those things where if you don't hear it a lot, you may lose it and whatever. But what was really important to me was that people kind of understood all the different ways that ethics can feed into certain things, as far as, they're there all the time and you may not even realize it, and, our biggest thing as recovery coaches is that, we intend to do no harm, obviously, and even when we do the ouches in the middle of the class, it's always on the assumption that there wasn't the intent to do harm, so we would always hope that people are trying to, make sure that they're always acting in the best interest of their recovery and whatnot. But just learning what some of those things are were really kind of eye-opening for people. So, and what's funny is, like, once you're done with that, it's like the morning is already over. And I don't know, Kevin, if you noticed training it goes really fast. You don't even realize, like, it's a long day, but yet you're already at lunch already. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, we're not throwing so many learning objectives and so many things at people. We really just want to cover some basics and give people a general understanding. And it almost makes the curriculum a little more rich. But as I said, at the end of the morning of day 1, you've addressed the first learning objective, and then the afternoon focuses on applying what we've learned to our work as a recovery coach. And then what we always do when we have people come back from lunch is we offer them time to reflect and to journal. So the one thing that I will say, too, is we didn't move groups around a lot. We moved groups around, we left people in their groups for the first day, and then we had people mix it up on the morning of the second day. And that's just because it's one of those things where, especially for the first day, people are still getting to know each other anyway, and unless you had people that are really in, like, these big cadres of groups that came in together, for us, especially with this work, giving them that additional opportunity to feel safe, and to be able to kind of build some of those relationships, to have some of those challenging conversations, was really important. I see Doug is typing, so I just want to... Nice. Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. The dialogue is what's been the most interesting part so far. Absolutely. And I hope that the curriculum, as you guys have said already, really allows for that space for people to be able to dialogue. So then the next piece that we talk about are why are ethics so important? And the purpose of that is to really review how ethics are woven through the services provided by a recovery coach. And then we really focus on how to stay on our lane and how ethically important it is to stay in our lane as recovery coaches. And this is where we start to begin some of that dialogue about boundaries. It's amazing to me how, even though we tried not to repeat completely like the whole big section from the RCA, but it was really important because I think when people come into this training, they almost kind of look at the staying in your lane, that whole concept, even more differently. It's even more like, oh, wow, that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we don't cross into this boundary and that boundary, and really why it's so important. And then what's really cool is that, the role plays and the boundaries. I don't know if you guys had as much fun with it, but people really have a lot of, they really push kind of the envelope a little bit with this, and we kind of want them to, because then when you go back and look at it, some of the things aren't really all that far off. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that could happen if somebody is not being a really good coach. And so having that opportunity to just kind of have a little bit of fun in such a very heavy, day is kind of what we wanted to have happen here. But again, really taking the time to sit there and think about what boundaries have been crossed and how it looks and what it may look like and what it may feel like when something just
Nope.
No?
goes wrong.
Sounds good.
So any questions about that? All right. And then by the end of the day one, they've gotten through the first 3 objectives. They've learned what ethics are. They understand why ethics are important when performing the recovery coaching services. And hopefully they know a little bit better how to stay in their lane as a recovery coach. So as I said, it goes by pretty quickly. So the beginning of day 2, again, our welcome and reviewing of the working agreements, making sure that people are still on board, negotiating if people need to add or take anything away. We review any outstanding items from the day before through huddles and mingles. And as I said, we rearrange the table groupings. And you can do that however you'd like, borrowing from the RCA, having people count off, using their birthdays or, favorite animal, number of siblings, however you'd like. But at this point, getting people kind of into some new groups to have some new conversations and to gather some new perspectives. So then we get into the core recovery values and ethical conduct. And it's really this module is really there to really look at that and to kind of demonstrate the connection to ethical conduct. And I think, when we started going through those, I know when I train it, it's, you go through the slides and they have it in their book, but it's really about trying to facilitate some of those conversations in between. People will kind of go through and talk about, they'll go through one and they'll be like, well, what does that really mean? Or what does it mean when you do this? Or what does it mean when you do that? And then all of a sudden, you could have like a really rich conversation, even though it's a very quick, PowerPoint kind of quick definition piece. And then the next piece with the ethical considerations is to really look at what it means to make ethical decisions. And so, again, it's just going through and kind of diving a little bit deeper, and really kind of thinking about, what is it, when we talk about, having that $20 bill on the floor, how is it to make that decision, and why are ethics important? Why are we even, talking about this? I mean, and just that one simple question really kind of drives people into so many more perspectives. We talked about, somebody, had said, well, I was a cashier once, so I know if my drawer was off by $20, I would be, written up or in trouble and whatnot. And somebody else was like, well, if nobody saw it, I'm going to take, you know what I mean? You have some of those kind of honest conversations, and it really makes people kind of look at and really look at that, multi-party vulnerability,
Yeah,
and how many people might be affected by picking up a $20 bill.
We had that same exact discussion probably from the manual, but there was one person said, I'm busy. That person dropped it. There's no way I'm going to find it. I'm keeping that. And then other people were like, oh no, I'd give it to the service desk no matter what. So it was really good. I mean,
Yep.
the power of that conversation was that we were all extremely gut level honest on how we would approach it. Which I think if you're telling us that that's what every class, if not, all classes experience, that's where the good stuff happens.
Mhm. Right, exactly. Like that's where the meat of this really comes into, and people have their own experiences, and again, and I love the way Doug captured it. It really kind of goes back to some of the core things that we learned in the RCA. It kind of goes back to, where we talk about people having their own biases and their own, it's managing your own stuff. You know what I mean? So I go back to, if I see something on the floor and I, know now that a cashier could be written up if that's from their drawer and everything else, but I may not have known that before because it wasn't my experience, I may change the way I think about that or the decision-making process now. You know what I mean? So just having that richness of conversation, something as so simple as, it happens. We've all seen, the $5 bill on the floor. It doesn't have to be 20, but, there's always that kind of opportunity to make either a really good decision or a really bad decision. And this is kind of where some of that really starts coming into play within the curriculum. And, yeah, it's just really interesting. There are some people, what if it was that person's last $20 bill and now they can't pay for their food? And, and how do I know if I give the $20 bill to the customer service person, they're not going to put it in their pocket? There's just so much that people go back and forth about. And at the end of the day, it's like, what is the next best right thing for me to do? You know what I mean? What is going to make me feel okay at the end of the day? And hopefully, I have enough, understanding of my own ethics at that point to know that for me, this is the right thing to do. I'm going to turn it in, and whatever somebody else does, I can't control. But for me, I'm going to be able to sleep at night if I turn this in knowing that it's going to help somebody else out, and that's kind of where people, like I said.
It does. Real quick, an example. Went to, on our way back from the ARCO leadership thing, I'm at Midway Airport. We get, all of a sudden, two of those big leather lazy boy type chairs with the power consoles in between and all that, the plugs open up. So we run over, and there's a charger, a backup battery charger that was left on the plug, and it's probably about an $80 thing. And I'm looking around at hundreds of people. And I grab it, and I hold it up, and I walk down the line of anyone getting on the plane, and then I go, well, I'll just give it to the service counter, and I sit back down. I'm like, there is hardly a chance that that's going to get back to that owner, and boy, I sure could have used one of those if it's just going to go to that box down below underneath their desk. And so, but obviously I already had the intent to just drop it, and I'm doing this basically because of the training. I'm thinking it through kind of more consciously. And within 10 minutes, this young girl comes running up. Oh my gosh, did you see that? I said, yeah, I gave it to them. She ran over, grabbed it, and I see her in the distance running away to catch up with her family, looking over her shoulder, waving at me and smiling. So it was awesome.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, hopefully, like you said, it just gives people a little bit more pause. That's all this can do, is just give you a little bit more pause to think, what is the best thing I can do right now, for all parties involved. And if all of it is for you to just take that quick second, some people call it a gut check, some people,
just brought it to my conscience. That was
it's helping us all make better decisions. And knowing that, yeah, and knowing that, you know, this is the other thing that we talked about is that, you know, and I think, Kelly, you might have mentioned it too, before you got cut off, is that we all have to count on each other. You know, I may not always make the best decisions because I'm human, you know, and I'm flawed. And I'm going to sometimes make a decision, you know, if I'm having a bad day or something, and I make a quick decision because I don't have time to do something, you know, as long as I have somebody to come back to as a sounding board to be like, you know, I did this, and now I'm wondering maybe I didn't do the right thing. You know, can you talk about this with me? You know, I think as coaches, you know, sometimes we're kind of flying solo a little bit, and I feel like we really need to kind of take that extra step to make sure that we have, you know, other people that we can turn to when things don't, you know, go the way we thought they did, to kind of talk about it, or to kind of say, you know what, I had to make this decision, and I think it was the right thing to do, but now I don't know, because I don't really know what my other options would be. And just knowing that somebody else's perspective might give you a different perspective is just so much, you know, so great, you know. And we have performance support meetings in our centers so that coaches can come in and kind of have that time to hash things out and talk about things that happened in the week, or, you know, this case or that case. And it's just really important, you know, because we shouldn't expect to be perfect. We shouldn't expect ourselves to be held up to this, you know, gold standard all the time. We're human, but at the same time, you know, the ability to have that opportunity for
Right.
feedback, and maybe next time I might do it a little bit differently, you know. So we talk about that a lot too, you know. Absolutely. So the next piece is, let me just move our slides along, really talks about decision making in the next few modules. We talk about wants versus needs, and it's really to help participants understand the difference between a want versus a need. And I know a lot of people don't need a lot of understanding, but I think, again, this is where the different perspectives come in. And then also, we know that as recovery coaches, we're dealing with people that are sometimes new in recovery, and so we need to demonstrate for them, you know, as guides and mentors and role models, we want to help them understand and differentiate between wants and needs. You know, so even, you know, as coaches, we may think we have a really good grasp of, you know, well, I know that I need to pay my mortgage every month, you know, but I really want this new iPhone 605, who, you know, whatever number they're on. You know what I mean? Like, I know I have a pretty good understanding of what I need to do and what I want to do. But would I be able to help somebody else differentiate? And so, you know, a lot of people said in the class, like, wow, I would do this with the people I serve. You know, I would I would definitely, like, you know, have them kind of work through a worksheet like this to kind of figure out. Because then it also goes back to trying to also refocus, like, well, what do I need to work on? You know, what are the biggest things that I need to do right now? You know, and what are things that I want to do? And so this is just kind of one of those modules that kind of helps guide some of the work that we do. Again, decision making, the purpose of that is to help participants learn about decision making, and then the zones of the decision making, that was lifted from the actual ethical article and things that Bill White had written, you know, really help people understand and connect about making decisions in their work as a recovery coach, and really going through, you know, and that's where, you know, I talked about doing this training for a treatment provider who was constantly, you know, anytime we brought something up, well, we don't do that because we're not allowed to give anybody our cell phones, or we don't do that because we would never go to a meeting with somebody else because we just don't do that. That's not part of our job. And it was like, okay, and I get that, and you have policies and procedures, but think about, like, if you were able to, you know, would you put, you know, a guideline on, you know, I'm going to only answer my phone between this hour and this, you know what I mean? Like just thinking about some of those things. So there's some things when you have clinicians in the room, and we've had them, they might have to think a little bit outside of their lane to get some of the things that we're saying. But their perspective in the room makes for a very rich conversation, I can tell you that. Any questions about any of those pieces? And Kelly, absolutely different viewpoints. You know, it was funny because we had somebody in our training class, you know, where we were doing the wants and the needs, and somebody was, you know, very new in recovery, was a volunteer for CCAR, and was really working on, she really wants to be a coach, and she's still living in a sober home, and so her needs and her wants were very different than a lot of the other needs and wants at the table, and yet it then allowed other people to be like, wow, you know, your needs are things that I kind of almost take for granted. You know what I mean? And it just, again, it allows for that, like you said, Kelly, different viewpoints. So by the end of the morning, hopefully people have the understanding of the decision-making process, which is one of the other learning objectives. And then again, at lunch or after lunch, when they come back, we offer the time for the reflection and the journaling. Why is this not moving forward? There we go. So then we start getting into application. So the next piece is the case studies. And those are fun. The purpose of this module is to give participants a chance to demonstrate their learning by reviewing some case studies. I'm not sure what your all experiences were with that. That brought on some very rich conversation. In case in point, the one about getting the phone call of the person who wanted the ride to the meeting, and then you show up there and that person's significant other is, you know, intoxicated or whatever, and now they want you to give them a ride and everything else, and, you know, and everybody else in the room, like, was very steadfast, you know, well, I would never put a person that's intoxicated in my car. I would never do that. It's just not going to happen. And then somebody said, well, what if they wanted to go to the meeting too? And then everybody changed. It was like, oh, then I might have them come in my car. Like, it was like all of a sudden it was like, no, absolutely not. They could get sick. There's a safety issue. I just wouldn't do it. And then as soon as it was turned to, well, what if, you know, maybe we could get that person to a meeting and kind of, you know, help them along, you know, the tide changed. It was like, well, you know, yeah, we could all three go to the meeting, and it was like, well, wait a second, what happened to the safety issue? Like, now it's not a concern, but you could see, like, how to just spin something, you know, that people all of a sudden saw a different perspective. And so, you know, just allowing for all that, instead of that whole black and white piece, we talk about it always being very gray. A lot of these things are always kind of in that field of grayness. The other piece that we found is when we had Phil and I train this together once, and the local donut shop, people were like already up in arms, like they're ready to call, you know, the Department of Children and Families. What do you mean these kids haven't eaten? And like very quick to like jump on, you know, oh my goodness, that's you know, and it was like, well, wait a second, let's tease this out a little bit. What about this? What about that? You know, and just looking at, again, those different perspectives. So I'm not sure if you guys have anything to say about this piece.
We did break out in that group and do our thing, and it really comes, you know, it always goes down to, well, it depends, and so it brought up some good discussions. But again, that's like, who said it earlier? Coaches having a coach. Was that Kelly or Carol? Yes. So the idea is, you know, the themes are brings it more consciously to my mind on why I make decisions, but also the collaboration, just our experiences in that room, collaborating with each issue shed a ton of light on how valuable it is to not be making decisions on our own, and actually taking the time to bother somebody at 10 at night. Holy cow, here's what I want to do. What do you think? And it's just that the value of that whole brainstorming session in the class can easily translate to real world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, kind of in the same way we touch on, sexual harassment in the RCA, we just touch on legal issues. It's not meant to be anything more than, again, a brief primer of some legal issues. And so we really just want to kind of, put those out there. In Connecticut, our recovery coaches are not mandatory reporters, but at the same time, if you work for an agency where just being an employee of that agency makes you a mandatory reporter, that's just one of those things that it is what it is. And then, we had a huge conversation about that too, because then it was like, well, if you see that something's going on, even though you're not a mandatory reporter, there's that pause again. There's that gut check. Would you be okay with not saying anything just because you're not obligated to say something? And so really just kind of, again, some of these things, it's like you think they're going to go fast, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, we're having like a pretty rich conversation about it. But it all goes back to really, again, the different perspectives that are coming at it, and really looking at what is the next best thing that I can do for the person that I'm serving, the next best decision I can make. And then, obviously moving forward, the purpose of that is to provide participants with an opportunity to think about all they've learned and put it into action. At the end of the day, we give people the code of conduct, because we really want to give people that opportunity, again, to kind of put the learning into action, to really apply it to their role, and developing their own code of ethics. And hopefully people are able to see CCAR, they kind of look at, well, what are CCAR's code of ethics or code of conduct? And we put those in there for people to see. And it's just kind of one of those things where when you go through it and you read them, you're like, wow, I would have never thought about putting that in there. But now maybe if I was going to write my own, we talk about people kind of sitting down on the first day with their recovery and saying, these are our working agreements. Well, as a coach, what would be in your code of ethics? What would be in your code of conduct? What would you want your recovery coaches to know about you? What would you want them to know that they can count on you to do, and really just putting it out there. So hopefully people kind of have an opportunity to do that piece. I know there was one of the sessions that I had done with Phil, he went around, he's like, I kind of want to take pictures of all these and post them because they're really cool, and it is, because it gets personal.
Yeah.
People really start thinking about what's important to them. And
on the
think
personal decision-making process, please take a few minutes to write down. We don't need to do it now, but it was really good for us to all share what we wrote, because people had completely different motives and completely different governing, guiding principles. All good. Obviously, people weren't sitting at the table sharing, weak or ineffective or unethical things. It was really, really good to see that. As a group, I couldn't believe how many, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, I never thought of that. That went through my head quite a few times. So that was really beneficial. We did not write we didn't end up writing the code of ethics there. We bugged out, and then everybody said, we're writing our own. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot to see if they've done that. My assumption is, to be a good trainer, you will have done that, and that's, what that is. But
right. Mhm. Right. No, absolutely. And we kind of left it open, we gave them the opportunity, if they wanted to share, they could, they didn't have to share their own thing, As I said, we had somebody who's very new in recovery, still living at a recovery home, and still really working on a lot of things, and she wanted to share hers. You know what I mean? She was so happy and proud of herself and everything else, as she should be, and so it gives people that opportunity too, but then again, there are some people that, this is my own personal and I don't want to, and so we leave it, very open, as far as that goes. And I think, all of our curriculum kind of has that. We don't say, as we say you should state this and this and this and this, but obviously, hopefully you're interjecting your own personal trainer style and things as you're going through. We want, these are the things that you definitely want to touch on, but in the middle of this conversation, if somebody has a question, and you can have that, teachable moment, absolutely, and so by the end of the day too, they've addressed the 2 remaining learning objectives. So Kevin, what you were just talking about is developing those guidelines for making ethical decisions. It is. It's like, what factors will you now consider when something hits you? And it may just be just a couple of things that you can ask yourself, like, who does it harm if I do one thing or the other? How many people does it affect? Or, you can go through and kind of give yourself those, when you're going to take that pause to make that decision that we're hoping people will begin to make, what are the things that are going to come into your head? And hopefully it's simple. Hopefully, like I said, it's just 1 or 2 sentences, or a couple of questions. It's not something where, I know in the original training there was like this big, huge grid and checklist. And
right.
It was so cumbersome, I don't think anybody would have sat
right.
down to consider filling out a report before they had to make a decision. And this is really, again, in that gut, in that pause, in those couple of seconds before you have to make that decision, what are you going to think about? And hopefully keeping it simple and remembering some of the things that we talked about, as Kevin, you experienced in the airport.
Consciously, consciously. I could
analyze.
I even recognize the fact that would be a nice unit to have.
So that's
that's the human part of us, right? And
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, who can't use another $20 in their pocket? You know what I mean? It's just, I mean, there's so many things, and yet at the same time, what am I going to be able to sleep with tonight? What am I going to be able to, go to bed and not have it running through my head because I know that this was wrong and I did it anyway? What
right.
is going to be, again, next best thing that I can do?
And I'm wondering, when we get to this closure evals piece, like, I would really like, I'm imagining a world where, like, okay, we don't need to take the time right now to go through everyone's decision-making process, that one particular sheet, and we don't really need to take the time to read each other. That's a personal code of ethics. But would it be beneficial in the future if I ever get involved in training other people to say, look, these are one expectation to become a trainer is that, you submit the decision-making process sheet, which, by the way, we've done in class. It's not like it's homework, right? They've done it in class. And it's not because I want to make sure everyone is a decent trainer, but because they had some really good things to share. It does indicate to whomever might look that while, this 2-day training had some powerful effects. So anyway, just food for thought. I would kind of like to ask everyone here, hey, submit your personal code of ethics and do that. I'm not the one in charge, so I'm not gonna, but just food for thought.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. And I think a lot of that, I mean, honestly, is just more the time of that, I think as a trainer, it would be interesting to see, what people are saying. Are there a couple of questions? And maybe there might be a way at some point, maybe in the future, when we do have our new website up for the CART side of CCAR that I'm working on right now, to be able to post some of those things. Not giving any less, names or things such as that, but just something that, like, wow, this is pretty powerful, or this trainer in this state ran this training, and this was one of those things that they came across, and wow, look at somebody, just as resources, just as other things, because again, we're all here to help support each other. Coaches, as you said, coaches should have coaches, and we should all be supporting each other because there isn't a lot of support for the role out there besides the people who are doing it. You know what I mean? And so there might be some ways to do some of that. It's logistics and the time it takes, but absolutely, there might be some benefit, and it could be one of those things that maybe I add it to the ethical considerations evaluation. I could say, what were your 2 questions?
Yeah,
or
I think
what was the couple
and people
of
really
factors?
do like
and
to
then at least as a trainer, you could get that
and people like to demonstrate what they've learned. People don't like the word test. They don't want a word, exam or anything like that. But most people go, when there's an opportunity to demonstrate something they learned, I think they enjoy it. So yeah, you're right. Future stuff, whenever. But it was a really good class.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. And then,
or maybe
again,
maybe
so
if we just pick,
so obviously is
if we just just shared it with
Kelly,
one
really
person,
idea.
That we took the class with, instead of sending it in or doing it as a group, but it would help us. I don't know about you, but I need I need to have some expectation or some deadline for something, or I need you to say, Kelly, I this personal code of ethics needs to happen. And then if we just do it with one other person, it gives us some accountability. And then we get, and then we get to practice also that, what we were talking about. So as far as being sounding boards for each other, and I'm sure that through just that sharing back and forth, we'll learn other things that have to do with this. It's the way it always works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and as trainers, I mean, it's harder for us at CCAR because we get people from all over the country to come to our trainings. But if you guys are doing trainings where people are kind of within the same geographic area, you could say, there's 10 people in the room. Why don't you guys kind of, find somebody that you worked with over the last 2 days that you might not mind having a conversation in a couple of weeks, and make an appointment to talk to each other about your personal code of ethics. Maybe that's how you develop that additional sounding board, for when you need to make that gut check.
And
or think,
and also, we're learning how to train this, and who better to learn with than somebody who's trying to accomplish the same thing.
Both on the same page, at least have gotten the same training and have understood the same things.
Yes.
Right. The same thing, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, that comes back to, as I stated, I worked for an educational agency for so long, and it was all professional development for teachers because they have to maintain, a certain number of hours every 5 years in order to be recertified as teachers and things. So when I came into this and came from the certification side of things, I was a big proponent of, continuing education, and continued professional development, and really making sure that people have those opportunities. And they may not need to be formal as going to a training or sitting on a webinar, but I think that, everybody could use those opportunities to continue to learn and improve, and so even if it is, like I said, partnering up with somebody and saying, hey, let's meet in a month and see where we're at and see what we're doing and see how we did and whatnot, and then continuing that, because that just helps us, and it also kind of helps us not only get better at our craft, but it shows a commitment to learning. It shows a commitment to improvement, and I think that that's really one of those things that we really need to do, is especially as sometimes there isn't a lot out there for coaches to continue to learn. You know what I mean? Like, we have just these few curriculums and that's it, and so we're trying to make more opportunities for people. You know, that's why we have our webinar training series. It's why we're trying to develop, you know, some more things, and but also trying to develop things where people don't have to always come to Connecticut to get it, you know, because we understand that that's kind of a burden sometimes too. So the same thing with the evaluations that we do for the RCA. They're done through SurveyMonkey. As soon as you register a training with us, I'll send you a link. They get the link and their class number. They go online. They take it 2 hours after they're done. They can go to the new recoverycoachacademy.us site and print out their certificate.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece too, I know in the end of the RCA where we have everybody kind of go around the room and write something about everybody in the room, we kind of put a couple of different options out there to kind of do the same kind of thing. One is the ball learning toss. You can have everybody come around in a circle, seated in a circle if you have people that aren't able to stand. Bring out like one of the toy squishy balls that I know we bring to our trainings, koosh ball, whatever, and you just have people send, you know, or send the ball to somebody else, and then they share one thing that they learned. And you can go around as often as you'd like, as much time as you have. Hopefully, you know, at the end, the presenter will get it back and kind of say a few words to close out the day. Or Star Shine, you can ask each member of the team to mention a star moment that they saw in somebody else during the training. And a star moment is referred to as a talent, gift, or contribution a participant had towards the group. And then as the trainer, you just want to make sure that every member of the team gets a star moment, even if you have to do some of those yourself. And the trainer may also suggest star shines that he or she
no, I think our closing exit was, okay, everybody, let's go home.
Any questions about any of those?
Brain fried.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm telling you, it really, well, especially you guys were wearing two hats as you were going through the training. And for us, you know, when we do the TOT, we're able to do it after. So it's like, you know, we can kind of do that kind of official closure and then kind of bring the TOTs back to kind of, you know, okay, now let's talk about the day. So, so I can definitely appreciate that. And like I said, there are two. The curriculum goes by fast, but they're long days. You know, you don't realize how much you get into.
Yeah, you touch on, you don't realize the deep stuff that you're going to touch on. And none of us ever knows, you know, another story or an example somebody's going to share that all of a sudden it reminds you or takes you back to an experience that was similar that you don't have time to. We're not there for therapy, so we're not going to, you know, go in and open up all of those wounds and hurts, but, you know, our brain does go there sometimes, and it takes a lot out of you.
Sure. Well, and I want to say thank you for letting us do the two hats at once. And really, I intended to go, yep, let's run through it as if, and then I realized everybody in the room is really quite capable of both. So that part, and it actually enhanced me personally as a trainer because everybody coming at it from both perspectives, you know, really helped that collaborative learning as a trainer thing, which is what you're going to duplicate afterwards when you do the TOT afterwards. Mm-hmm. So it was the same kind of thing. So that being said, I'm anxious to do one where it's all individuals looking to get the hours, and to see that dynamic because it's going to be a little different. I think our first one is going to be put on by Douglas. That is, if Douglas, you type in your chat thing that you feel confident. Oh, there you are. Yeah. So we're excited and ready. We're just gonna, you know, take it a step at a time.
Right. No, absolutely. And then what I'll do is I will be, Carol, thank you. I'll be sending individual certificates after today's session for the TOT piece. But what I'll do for the ethics piece, so you guys get your standard CCAR ethics certificate, is I'll send you all a link to evaluate the training that Kevin did. You know what I mean? The actual CCAR one, so that you can have the experience of going to the, going through the SurveyMonkey ethics eval, and then also being directed to that end page where we tell people about the how to print their certificate. So I'll go into that a little bit. And we've been kind of running, well, I've been running ragged. I'm not sure people know that. I'm the only one that kind of runs this part of CCAR. So when we started doing the SurveyMonkey and doing the certificates, I would email everybody certificates after the fact. And so I was literally sending out a personalized email to every single person and hand typing those in once everybody did their SurveyMonkeys, which was taking, I can't even tell you, a ridiculous amount of time, especially then when people weren't able to get their certificates. It would either go into a spam folder or a junk folder because either my email wasn't recognized or the PDF made it seem like it was spam. And it was just taking up a real lot of time. And I know people still have difficulties understanding where in SurveyMonkey they're supposed to go. I try to make it very detailed in the book, that you type in www.surveymonkey.com/r/RCA, the 3 digits or the 4 digits, or ETH for ethics, whatever it is. And yet, so I get that. So I know that there's already a learning curve with that. But then when people were not getting their certificates because they were falling through the cracks, or because they were going back and taking surveys from like 3 months ago, and then I have to open up, it was just a lot. So we developed, and we had somebody develop a program, exactly, develop a program so that it would automatically take all of the information from SurveyMonkey, generate a certificate, and make it available through a website. So it's just the only thing that I can say, and that I've had to deal with on my end a little bit too, again, another learning curve, is that it's not automatic, because there are so many surveys that are taking all the time in SurveyMonkey. If we had it generate like every 5 minutes, it's just too much data being dumped from the websites, too much information for the two sites to communicate with each other. So every 2 hours, our website pulls from SurveyMonkey all of the data, all of the new data, and plugs it into this little program where basically people get directed to www.recoverycoachacademy.us. They can go to that website, type in their email address, and in 2 hours, you know what I mean? Like, it takes 2 hours, they're able to pull up their certificate. Now, for anybody who's taking a training as of February of this year, that's been the model. What's really cool about it is that in 6 months from now, if they lost their certificate, or maybe they lost their email, they lost it in a move, they need it for a job, this, that, and the other thing, now they're getting certified, they can't find their certificates, they can go back to that recoverycoachacademy.us, put in their email address, and their certificate will be there. Also, if they've taken the RCA, and then they've taken ethics, and they've taken spirituality, any certificate that they've gotten through that website will be there. They just have to click on the one that they need. So it's kind of a newer thing. We've been doing it for about 6 months. It's working. To me, it's working really well. Again, I still have the phone calls. People are asking, where's my certificate? I didn't get it emailed, so I'm redirecting them. At the end of the SurveyMonkey certificate, we do bring them to a web page that explains the new process, but not everybody reads it, and I know that. So so I still get some emails, and I just kind of, I'll go to the website, find their certificate, send it back and say, hey, it's here, click on this PDF, and also anytime you need to go back and reprint it, you can go to this main website and do that. I'm hoping that once our CART website is up, that I can have those details also more explicitly written, so that if anybody's having an issue, it's kind of like a FAQs regarding certificates. But I'll have you guys all go through the process just so you can see it. as part of this training, so that you'd be,
Okay.
able to help other people, that
Well, let's say Randy gets called by an agency in the Flint area, wants to do a training. So I can help him do all this so we don't bog you down with all this if it's similar to CCAR stuff. But we would go to the website, we would order the manuals. How much are they, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, so we ordered the manuals, then we fill out the registration form, enter into the PDF, and send that to you. Two steps, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. Yep, 2 steps. So you order the manuals, you fill out the form. Then as soon as I get the manuals and the form so that I know like when you need them and when the training is so I can put it into my database, I generate a number for your class. And so I send that to you in an email, thanks, I got your order, I just processed your manual order, it'll be there by, or, whatever, and then I put in there, here's your evaluation link for your class. And then the link is in there, and then I also give you your class number because the participants need to put that in when they're doing their evaluation. So when they go to do their evaluation now, it'll say, when did you take the class, what month, what year, and what's your training class number. And basically, SurveyMonkey uses all that to generate the information that goes onto the certificate. So, and what's cool about that is that then if somebody says to me, oh, I don't, I need the details, I don't remember this or that or whatever, but they remember the class number, I can go right back to my database and say, oh, that was so-and-so's class. Here's the
And I just had 2 people. We did a recovery coach summit put on. You might have gotten an email, I think you did, from Bill Morrison asking for registered coaches in Michigan. And so in Kalamazoo, they put one together. We had like 30 people show up. It was really cool. And 2 of those individuals from the last class hit me up and I never got my certificate. I'm like, check your spam. Yep. Here's the number. Let's try to this before we bug Stacy. So, so by the way, that go ahead.
Right. Yeah, but now they
Bye-bye.
don't need to do.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's all right. I was just saying goodbye, Kelly. Have a wonderful weekend. Absolutely. So as far as the advance, we like to have 2 weeks. Sometimes I know people may not know their numbers, but if you can at least let me know that you're planning one, I can put it into the database, and then, if you can let me know as soon as possible how many you'll need, just because it takes a few days for the manuals to ship. My printer is really good at getting things there quickly. However, the more people that are last minute, the harder it is for them to meet deadlines. And so the more advance notice that I have, the better. Also, as Kevin knows too, if I know that people are planning training, I will, if somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I really want to take this training, but I live in Michigan and I want to know, who's doing one or whatever. The more in advance that I have that information that you have one coming up, I will forward that person to you if it's in my.
All right, well, that's good stuff.
I do that with Kevin all the time.
Great.
It'll
Sounds
be a
like
learning
it's
curve.
getting simplifying it a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be a learning curve on us, but we'll do it.
It's all the logistics, the meat and the potatoes of getting it all done. Yeah, trying to. Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And then the other piece too is that as we're working to kind of, so everything is right now under CCAR's umbrella, and then we have this new umbrella that we announced a few months ago called CART. It's the Center for Addiction Recovery Training. And so basically what we're doing is kind of making it so people don't see CCAR as like this just little tiny Connecticut model. We want the Center for Addiction Recovery Training to kind of not be under such a Connecticut focus, and so that's that's really the project that I run, where all these curriculums and everything that I've been talking about come under. Eventually that will have its own website. Well, it has a website now. We're just not utilizing it because I haven't had a lot of opportunity to go in there and really get it to where I want it to be. But eventually all those forms and things such as that will be available right on the website. So if you needed something as a trainer, there will be like its own separate trainer session on the website, so you'd be able to just go there and get, you know, the download of the PDF of the form and things such as that. So it's in process. And so I'm hoping sooner than later I'll be reaching out to trainers to let them know that it's happening. And then the other piece, too, that I want to do is actually list people that are trainers in states with either like an email address, or if people want to phone it, whatever their choice is. I'm not going to post anybody's information without their permission. This will all go out in an email to trainers. So that I can list people, and then this way, instead of, you know, people asking me, you know, like, well, hey, you know, I want a training in Michigan, as I've discussed with Kevin before too, I don't know the geographics and the distribution of Michigan. So if somebody says that they want something in Michigan, I send them all of Michigan. And I know Michigan's a big place, you know, as I said to Connecticut. We don't have that problem here. Anybody can kind of get to anywhere pretty quickly here in little old Connecticut. But if I put in, you know, a trainer's name and their city, then somebody can kind of pinpoint, you know, a trainer that they want to target because they're within a half hour or things such as that. So I want to eventually do that sort of directory, because it'll help you all out, because then people will be able to know that that's where they can go to get training, and we'll go from there. Carol, I'm going to be sending out an email. I'm in the middle, and Phil and I are working together. There's a lot of things that we're trying to roll out because CART is now happening. And that will go in an email to trainers. And what I'll probably do is I'll just probably put together like a Google Docs form that'll basically
Great. The other thing is, you know, the certificates are very, very important, but one of the things that I've found as a trainer is getting the feedback, not for like, hey, this is so great, but that's where I learn where maybe our weak areas or something, you know, that we didn't get across. In other words, it's the opportunity for me to learn, you know, how to do things better. In a past training, we hadn't received that information, and I totally get it now. Sounds like you have you're an air traffic controller, and all your planes are in the air. Yeah. So, with this new ethics training, is there going to be that same opportunity that we would get the information feedback?
Yes, pretty much. We will, actually, Carol. The same person who wrote the program for the website is the same person that I have tasked with to get me an evaluation summary from SurveyMonkey.
Oh, my goodness.
So that it can be more of an automatic process. What I used to have to do is kind of go in, download all the data, format it, get it ready, and send it to folks. So again, it was something that was taking an awful huge chunk of time. And again, also like you said too, what's the pertinent information that you want? Because I can tell you, in going through and doing that, very rarely did I ever find, you know, that all the excellent said anything other than, you know, anything lower than very good or good.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's, you know, that's some of the beauty of the CCAR curriculums, you know. So it's almost some of that, the personal narrative feedback that's really important.
Right.
Not that you rated very well, or not that the survey met the learning or the training met the learning objectives, but, you know, as a trainer, what were some things that people maybe felt were missing, or the trainer feedback, you know, the things that were really, you know, pointed on how you guys were doing. So I am working with him on that. And so it is something that's in process. I can tell you, I actually just had a meeting because it's taking him a little bit longer because there is so much data and trying to figure out a good format to get it to folks. But it is something that once it's up and running, it would be retroactive. So I'm hoping that I could even say to trainers too, now that you have your course number, you could go to that website and go right there and put in your course number and get your feedback. That's what I would like to have happen because I know not everybody cares. And so I don't want to kind of keep emailing somebody if they're never going to look at it. But for those of you who want it, you'd be able to have that tool. So
and my wife,
I just wanted to thank you. You know, it's like we said when we started recovery coaching, we're building this plane as we're flying it, and so yeah, so I totally understand and appreciate that you're looking at all aspects and to give us more tools and opportunities. And I want to thank you. You did a great job on this.
Yeah, it's good. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You know, I am hopeful. I just got approval to hire a part-time admin assistant for this project. So I'm hopeful that, you know, there'll be some help with some of that logistical stuff too, you know, and I really try my hardest to be very responsive. You know, you guys are only as good as the support we provide too, you know, and so I really try my very hardest to make sure that I answer emails, oh, thanks, Doug, that I answer emails on time and that I, you know, I return phone calls, you know, I try to do my best at that. And so, you know, unfortunately, some of the big picture items that we want to look at get stalled a little bit because there is so much to managing this project and managing the trainings. And, you know, we just hit that we've trained over 10,000 coaches. So when you think about those numbers and all those certificates and things such as that, I mean, you know, it's a ton. And we wouldn't be here where we are if trainers like you all weren't out there doing what you do either, you know. So, I mean, we're all in this together. And so I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate when people, you know, say, hey, you know, I really need this. You know, I try to do my best to do that. And it, you know, like I said, when this first started in 2009, and it was just 5 little sessions, you know, here in Connecticut, I don't think anybody.
That's what I wondered.
It would be where it is right
I
now.
saw that. I'm like,
you know,
wow, reached 1,000? Holy
in
cow!
my database, and I think just the other day, I gave out a code of 1109. That means that there's 1,100 trainings registered in my database since day one. Yeah, so that's. Yeah. So, but then the sheer numbers of it and managing it is just like, okay, wow, you know, and so some of it is how can we do it better, you know, and again, flying the plane or building the plane while we're flying it is how some of this goes. So, you know, one of the pieces that they did all along was the paper evaluations, and then somebody had to sit and type them up and send them back. That was really hard, you know, and so we moved to the electronic surveys. And so now we've moved to not only electronic surveys, but now electronic certificates. So, you know, it's always a changing process, you know, and so whatever feedback you guys have, if there's things that you feel you need or whatever, you know, always feel free to email me. I'm not always sure I can move on something as quick as I would like to.
Yep, will do. And that's because so many people goof up and order their binders late that you're always juggling that.
From us, I hope that,
did the ones go out for Detroit? Because there was some confusion. Okay, good. No problem. Well, that was, yeah.
They did. They're supposed to be there today. Yeah.
Right, keeping tabs on everything. And so, yeah, that was Tiffany from Glaxy had never done the process. So anyway, we got that worked out. But one other thing I wonder is that sometimes trainers pop up we don't know about. So here you got us 8 or 9, however many were in that room. we're all sharing the love. If it's in Randy's area, Kelly's area, we're going to share the love and say, go seek them out. Nobody's trying to hoard all the business, but is it possible for you to ever detect that somebody is, taking the training from Michigan and say, hey, there's a cohort of trainers you may want to be introduced to, at least so we know they're there. And it's really more about unification. Okay.
Well, I think and I think that's what I want to try to do with the CART website, Kevin, is so that there would be that listing by state so that you would all see, and then also, like I said, just the distribution in a state, only because, for me, like I said, I don't always know. If somebody says, well, I'm in Lansing and I need, trainers around that area.
Yeah, and that's really worked out well for us anyway, because that gives me an opportunity to meet new people. But yeah, take the load off and just send them our way. We're certainly not the formal, dubbed leader or whatever in the trainings of CCAR, but we certainly have all those connections. So that'll work out well. But I just want to make sure these folks. Right, because some of these folks are investing out of their own, and then so we want to make sure that we steer people their way as quick as possible. That's really not your focus as much as an interest of mine, but I know you care about that, so thank you.
Right. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and, one of the biggest things, too, is, obviously, CCAR's success lies on the shoulders of our trainers, always. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, whatever we can do to help, make it so that your role is easier, we will do. And, once we get that master list from people, I'd be happy to share it, not even just through the website, but I'd be happy to then share it with all the trainers just so that they know. Maybe you have a relative out in so-and-so that's interested and didn't realize that, wow, there's a whole cadre of trainers right in your own backyard. Why don't you give one of them a call or, whatever. So the one piece, it'll definitely differentiate who's an RCA trainer from those who also are able to do ethics, as well as those who are also able to do spirituality, and then any other trainings that we decide to develop, because I can tell you there's a laundry list of things that we would like to do. The other piece that I can share with you is that we are very close to releasing the Recovery Basics for Parents. It's a one-day training, and I say it's a one-day training in that it's an 8-hour training. It might be a very long 8 hours because there's a lot of information, because it's basically taking some of the content from the RCA and squishing it down to what parents might want to know. And so we're going to make that available for all trainers because it follows very much what the RCA already does. So there isn't really the need to have to come out and do a TA with TA or sit through it, because you've all done that by going through the RCA. And so we'll be rolling that out shortly. We're not doing like a full trainer's manual. We're doing trainer's notes. Again, because as people are pretty skilled in training the RCA already, you shouldn't need like scripts and things because it's already modules that we've already done. And so just giving people like an idea of what the task should be, what you hope to accomplish, and these are some points to make. So again, that's something that will be coming out. I'm hopeful within the next, let's see, it's the end of July, so I'm hoping by the end of August that that'll be out for folks. And we're going to keep that manual pretty cheap. We're going to keep that manual at just $20. It's a little workbook. It's not spiral bound, so people are able to kind of, parents would be able to use it. It's no bigger than a magazine kind of thing. But for us, it's very helpful for, no, I don't, ever. But it's very helpful for parents and other family members to kind of know what to expect, and how to understand and how to work with, their child who may be in recovery, or maybe not in recovery, and just how to help support that, because we know that there are parents out there that just don't know how to talk. We did have a Facebook page that I had opened for trainers, and not a lot of people got into it. But now that I'm developing a CART Facebook page, I think I'm going to go through and do one off of that. It just I haven't done that yet, but I'm hoping that that'll be part of that announcement that goes out to trainers to tell them about the new CART website and the need to collect the information, that there will be a Facebook page. And it would be closed, that only people that are trainers, because the other one isn't closed. And so it was hard to manage, but this one would be something that just trainers would be able to get in on. So thank you, Carol. But yeah, we will definitely try to incorporate that in the coming months so that we have it. Because there is a CART Facebook page. I'm not sure if people know that people can
So
go
the CART
and search for that.
The CART Facebook page is open, and the CCAR one is closed. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? The CART Facebook page is open for anybody because it's just the Center for Addiction Recovery Training. So there's a page that you can like. I think there's also one that's CART at CCAR that I had to create in order to create the business CART page. So those are both on there. I'm slow to posting because it just started, but I'm trying to get some mechanisms in place so that it posts pretty regularly. But like when Phil did his all recovery meeting the other day,
I did have a question
so that people could
on
grab the link.
someone's approached me about doing the training in Flint. I'm actually on vacation. I'm going out of town this next whole week, so I agreed to go talk with them like that first week in August. And I was full of questions. A lot of them have been answered by Kevin and you already. But I just know other things are going to pop up on the procedure of setting up my first training. So I know, Kevin, you'll probably be at my disposal to ask questions.
I'll be available in any way, shape, or form you need. Yep.
All right. What do you suggest? I just kind of like wing it here and go on my own and figure it out, or pardon, Stacy? I missed that.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too, Randy. Even if you get to the point. As far as planning your first one, you can definitely, if you want to, when you get back, we can set up a phone call, Randy, and I can kind of walk you through the process. I mean, it's really quite simple to go online and order the manuals. The form is pretty easy to complete. We ask who the sponsor is, where the training location is, and where we send the manuals within that form. And that just helps so that if somebody calls and says, hey, I saw there was a training, but I have no idea where it is, or what, this, that, and the other thing, I have all the contact information to reroute that person to the appropriate training that they're trying to get in touch with. But yeah, we can definitely set up a time to chat when you get back, or maybe go to your meeting, and then if you have a listing of questions that you're not able to answer or whatever, we can chat, and if, you could say, oh, I have to check with CCAR about that. That's, not a problem. But I think that once you go through the first one.
And Randy, I can help you with phone calls, negotiations, discussions, so that you don't feel like you're just like, yeah, I don't know. So we give that first one kind of a tag team so that you feel, you've got all the answers. But it'll be pretty good. I think it'll go well. I want each one of you to be able to do as many of these as possible, because I don't know how many of that 10,000 coaches we have in Michigan, but I want every coach in Michigan to have it. And then there are other people who can have it. I mean, you don't have to have you don't have to be a recovery coach to take the ethics training. That's correct, right? I mean, that was.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right, absolutely. And honestly, like I've said, we've had clinicians come in because, you know, the thing about the recovery coach role is that some places don't even know how to implement it. You know what I mean? So by them sending, you know, treatment providers, sending folks to the RCA and to the ethics training, then they understand how to utilize a position that may be existing in their agency that they're not really utilizing to the fullest of its potential, you know? And so we've had some folks come just so they can understand it, because there's so much that a recovery coach can do, and the ways that a recovery coach can connect with a recovery is very different, you know. And so we hope that people are working in partnership, you know, together to help somebody, that there's a team of people, you know, if somebody needs a counselor or a therapist or, you know, medication and things, that a recovery coach is an equal part of that team, you know, to be able to do what they do really well. But I think as far as the ethics piece goes, a lot of times what's happening is coaches are being, you know, for these agencies that already have coaches, they're going through the typical clinician ethics training and what agencies are doing with their clinicians. And we know that this is a very different role. And I think that as coaches, because there is that less hierarchy between us and the people that we serve, you know, we have, as I said, there's more gray area. You know, there's more pitfalls that we can fall into, you know, and so we have to be really vigilant. And so I think that, you know, reminding people that this
It's
is
like,
really
I mean, we
for
share a lot
coaches,
more of our
but
story
it's
than a
open to everybody so that
clinician
other
would.
people know
They don't.
that this is the role
And
that the coach has.
it took a
It
while, I
doesn't
think, in
diminish
my
for
agency for
anybody.
them to understand that. Why are you telling them that? You know, sort of thing. But yeah, it would be beneficial to think of a couple cases where to have others set in on it. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's kind of one of those things too where, I mean, even going back to what people need in order to be certified, if you're going to go that route.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and we just, you know, it's kind of one of those things too where, I mean, even going back to what people need in order to be certified, if you're going to go that route as a marketing pitch, you know, too, everybody needs ethics ongoing, you know, for certifications and things. So it's not just getting that first, I'm not sure what your hours are in Michigan, that first core 46 hours or 50 or 60 or whatever it is, that there's ethics that are supposed to be ongoing in most people who are in this profession, recovery coach and otherwise. And so
I have to ring off at 11 to make another call.
Ethics, there's
anything else you need
that
from
you
me,
might
or
have other people that take it just so that they can get those ethics credits.
So we just need to send in our money and registration. Good.
No, that's okay. We can wrap this up unless anybody has anything else. Which some folks have already done. Yeah, the actual form, which I've gotten a couple already, and then like I said, those manuals I'll be sending out. I've gotten 2 forms already, so I'll send those out to folks. I'm not sure if any got faxed to the main office today. I'll call over there and check. But I'll get the manuals out to folks.
About how long does that take to get the manuals,
Stacey? With the PowerPoints on it, so that you guys have that, and you'll have everything that you need to get started. Thank you, Carol. I appreciate that.
Okay, that'll work good. Thank you.
The manual, our printer is really good.
Okay, thank you.
The request today, Randy.
I'll get
likely you'll.
Yeah, I'll get you. I'll get back. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Stacey.
Okay.
No problem. Absolutely.
Great.
Yep, nice
Thanks, everybody. Drive fast.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Get in touch with me if you need to.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Thank you. Nice